So this is my trike-mobile, affectionately named Big Bertha. I love Big Bertha. We've been on a ton of fun adventures together, and specifically, she enables me to take passengers flying on tandem adventures. But there's one thing that Bertha lacks, and that is power. Who doesn't want more power? Luckily, Polini just released their Thor 303, and this sounded like the perfect engine for me. When it comes to power, this engine has it. Full disclosure, Polini sent this engine over completely free for this review video. So in this video, we're going to be talking about some of the features, the install, and my first impressions when we get it in the sky. The Thor 303 is a single-cylinder, liquid-cooled 281cc engine. It puts out 38 horsepower at 8,000 RPM, which equates to 120 kilograms or 265 pounds of thrust. Fuel consumption is only 3 liters per hour at a cruise of 4,500 RPM. For a big motor like this, that's phenomenal. The motor comes in 3 versions: manual start, e-start and manual start, and e-start, manual start, and dual spark. I personally went with just the e-start and manual start version. Overall, the engine has a compact design with an attractive finish. The airbox has been designed to be aerodynamic and compact. It's easy to start either with manual or e-start. It features a choke control and a safety switch to disable the electric start. Lastly, it features a new Delorto 28mm carb. The technology in this carb makes the engine less sensitive to environmental changes in pressure, temperature, and humidity. Now let's get to the install. And no, I didn't grow the mustache back. This occurred when I still had it. Polini t-shirt. Oh, no way. Polini service kit. Digital racing system. This looks like some type of tachometer, hour meter device. Got the classic Polini throttle. This is an entire damn Polini floor rug mat. Oh. So this engine is a bit more complicated than a standard, being water cooled and e-start and a lot more moving parts. I've got a brand new subframe for the trike, which is reinforced and built specifically for this engine. So I'm gonna get that out and start figuring out how this entire system gets mounted up. Done a little inventory. Down here I have basically all the radiator parts, the hoses, all the accessories, the screws and mounts and things like that. Up here, I've got the engine essentially stripped of all the dangly bits that were just zip tied on. And right here in this box, I have the new subframe that I ordered that is made to handle this engine with the correct mounting patterns and the reinforcements necessary for this much power. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unbox this. I'm gonna take the engine off of its cage, and I'm gonna see about transferring the engine onto the actual subframe. Then from there, I can start to figure out the wiring, the cooling, the radiator, the throttle, all those accessories. So in my case, I was doing a complete engine swap. However, most people would never have to do this because they would just order their Paramotor from the factory with the engine already installed. Basically, I mounted the engine to the subframe, I plumbed the coolant lines and filled the engine with coolant. I also wired in the e-start battery as well as the shutoff switch for the e-start. I mounted the engine gauge cluster, which shows the RPM, the runtime in hours, and the coolant temperature taken at the head. Lastly, I mounted up the 140 centimeter 3-blade E-prop, which is my preferred choice for this engine. Okay, my friends, Polini 303. Look at this bad engine. The time has finally come. I finally got this guy mounted up. Everything is plumbed properly, the electricals, the coolants, the oil levels. Everything should be dialed. I think the only thing left to do at this point is go outside and see if she fires up. Initially, I had a little bit of trouble getting the engine running, but that's because this engine is so different from any other engine I've owned in the past. What I learned is you basically only ever have to prime the engine if the bowl in the carburetor is empty, which is almost never. I found that the choke is super helpful, especially in cold weather, and I use it as the engine's warming up. Once you get the technique and the idle RPM dialed in, the engine fires right up. After I confirmed that the engine was running right on the ground, it was ready for the first flight. Okay, so here we are. Time has finally come to do the maiden voyage on the Polini Thor 303. Wind conditions are somewhat light, moderate. I'm not planning on flying this setup for very long for this initial test run. I want to give it time to have everything seat, make sure that I have no leaks. no loose screws at the end of the flight. So I'm probably just gonna rip around the pattern a couple times, get a feel for the power, and do just an initial shakedown run right now. Make sure everything's operating right. So all that's left is to lay out my wing, get some cinematic shots, and take her to the sky.
Okay. Oh shit, I'm nervous. We got this though.
So as you may expect with any first test flight, it didn't go exactly as planned. But not to worry, I got everything sorted out and it turned out the issue was basically an install error.
Woo! She's got power. That's for certain. Oh, she's touchy. I don't think I've gone above half throttle yet. Let's climb and get a little altitude. Holy shit, man. I feel like I'm about 3/4 throttle, and it's getting like a little scary. Let's see if we can get an actual full throttle climb going on, just to see what it's like. Holy shit! God damn! This baby has some power. I got the Mojo 24 meter, which is probably a little bit overloaded. She's fully trimmed out, and we were just pointing at the sky. I'm just kind of getting used to the throttle. It is very sensitive, which is a good thing because it's running this E-prop, which is super lightweight. That's why I love E-props. So it makes the response really quick, but this motor has so much grunt and torque behind it. It's just like, it'll rip this E-prop so hard. Okay, that was a little weird. I feel like I was losing power. Yeah, something's not right. Yep, she died. I'm not even gonna try to restart it. This is an actual quote-unquote emergency landing, but I'm right over my LZ, so not a big deal, not a big deal. I hope this is nothing major.
All right, so the first test flight didn't go exactly as planned. The good news is I talked to the guys at Polini. They were very helpful, and the solution they proposed was pretty simple. I didn't realize, but apparently there are different types of fuel filters. The actual filter resides in the gas tank, and it acts as a weight to pick up the last bit of fuel from the bottom of the tank, but it also doubles as a filter. What Polini suggested is that the 303, because it sucks so much fuel, requires a very specific type of fuel filter. This filter right here, I've never seen anything like it, is a certified genuine Polini part. I got this shipped from my friends at Aviator. It's almost like a tea bag, whereas the one that's in the fuel tank right now is like almost like a rock. Polini seems to think that my problem was fuel starvation, essentially. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on before the next test flight. In addition to that, Polini sent over some more parts, basically to lower the compression ratio of the engine because there were some issues with detonation if you used lower octane gas. So in this box is a new head for the engine that's going to lower the compression. Apparently it doesn't take away any of the maximum power. It's supposed to smooth out the power band, and it's supposed to make starting the engine easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and install these parts as well. And one more thing, the third thing that we're doing is I was using 93 octane pump gasoline. However, Polini suggested that 100 low lead avgas is actually better. So I'm gonna drain all the fuel out of the tank, I'm gonna put in the new filter, I'm gonna put on this new head, and I'm gonna mix up 5 gallons of fresh avgas. And that's what we're gonna be running in the engine from now on. All right, so I've installed the new head. I've installed they give you a different needle for the carburetor. Had to drain the coolant, refill the coolant. Before we do the final step, which is the new fuel filter and draining the tank and adding 100 low lead, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure she still cranks and fires up. All right, very good sign. Everything still works. Now I'm gonna drain the fuel tank, I'm gonna put in the new fuel filter, and I'm gonna get 5 gallons of freshly mixed avgas. All right, so here we are, officially running on 100 low lead avgas. I'm gonna walk over here so it's not as loud. I'm letting the motor warm up, which is one thing you have to do with an engine like this that's water cooled. It takes a little bit longer to get to temperature, so I'm gonna let her do that. She fired up on the first pull start, so I think she's liking the avgas. New head's installed, new carburetor needle thing is installed, new fuel filter, and we're running on avgas. Hopefully tonight's test flight goes flawlessly. I'm super excited, and yeah, it's gonna be great. See how she rips.
All right, you know the drill. Gonna clip into our glider. Time to climb aboard. Motor is purring nicely behind me. She sounds ready to go. She's all fired up. All right, one thing left to do. Hit the gas and go. Little taxi. Yes, sir. All right, I'm gonna gain some altitude, climb out over the park. Hell yeah. I love when my mechanical handiwork actually works. And we got this beautiful sunset to top it all off. So, immediate first impressions on the very first test flight, one of the notable things was how instant the thrust was. And it's because this is a really big, powerful motor mixed with a really lightweight propeller, and that made it snappy. And snappy's good, but it was almost too snappy to the point that I was like jerking around and I had to get used to it. One of the things that they said this new head and needle in the carburetor was going to do is smooth out that throttle. And I can tell that for sure. Like, as I lifted off the ground, I didn't get that, sudden jolt. And my cruise RPM is really smooth right here. I have yet to hit like more than half power, so we'll see how that goes. But right now, I can barely reach my brake toggle. I gotta do an adjustment. Right now, I just want to cruise around and feel things out, and then we'll go for a full throttle run in just a second. Okay, so far, my first impression on this flight is it feels so much more tame, like so much more usable and not jerky. But the question is she still gonna bark as hard when we hit full power? So that's what I want to try now. So this is my cruise RPM. I'm like maybe 1/3 power. Let's ramp it up to full. Oh yeah, she still barks. I am climbing at the sky. That is bananas. The biggest reason I wanted more power on this trike was for tandem flying, and that's one of the biggest reasons I have the trike in general. The previous motor I had on here, it would do it, but for tandems, you really want to have that extra power. One, for safety margin, and two, when you get heavier passengers, you kind of start to need it. All right, we're gonna go for this second soccer field here. Nice flat area for a trike touch and go. I'll come in on power just to demonstrate the smoothness. Oh, so smooth, so controllable. And I had to goose it just a little bit because we were coming up on that hill, but still very smooth delivery. That is awesome. Oh, that is graceful. Yes. Look at that. I'm just like grazing the throttle, and that's our cruise setting. We'll land right on top of this little hill. Doot, 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 doot. Skirt! That was awesome.
All right, time for some concluding thoughts on the Polini Thor 303. Overall, I'm really stoked on this new engine. Not only does it have an insane amount of power, which should be more than enough for all of my tandem adventures, I'm also really stoked that it's super smooth in that mid-range, so I can go have fun flying this thing solo. Speaking of which, I have an idea where I want to fly this particular motor solo to Taco Bell and drive it straight through the drive-thru, so stay tuned for that. We'll do some solo missions, we'll do some tandem missions. I also want to see if maybe I can set a new personal altitude record. That's something maybe for the summertime when it's nice and warm, and I want to put a lot of prep work into it, but it's an idea I've had for a while. Huge thank you to Polini for sending this engine over and for their support. Make sure you follow them on Instagram, which I'll put on the screen and in the description. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Till the next one, fly safe, have fun, peace.